college football moving to a new 12-team playoff format this year. My goal today is to predict the 12 teams in college football that are going to make the playoffs this year. I got my 12 that I'm projecting to make it, and I got another like 4 to 6 teams on the bubble that I think I could easily see making it. Without saying much less, let's go get right into it. Try and get through this a little quickly. Don't want to make it too long of a video. Starting off, I got Ohio State at the top. I think pound for pound, player for player, the best roster in college football Ohio State has. Like, they already had an incredible roster. Then they go out and get Caleb Downs and Quinshaw Judkins, two of the best players in the portal. I mean, this team is stacked from. They also get Jeremiah Smith, one of the best receiver recruits we've seen in a while, that will contribute as a freshman. Insane roster from Ohio State. I still don't know how they got like Tui Malaw and Jack Sawyer to return. So great roster, pound for pound. I think they're the favorite to win the Big Ten. And then right behind them, like I said, this isn't an order from 1 to 12 necessarily. These are just the 12 teams. Next up, I got Oregon. I think they're the other team that has a good chance at winning the Big Ten. You saw the talent last year. They bring in some transfers, get Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart, some other guys on the defense from the portal. I think they're going to be a team that's really good. Their first year in the Big Ten. The only thing that scares me a little bit is like the first year in the Big Ten, but I mean, at the same time, these other Big Ten teams aren't used to playing Oregon, so their offense should be clicking. So they're my second team from the Big Ten that I think has a really good shot at making it. Next up, we're moving to the SEC. We got Georgia. I think Georgia, I don't really have to say much else. Carson Beck, one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation right now. They're going to have one of the best defenses in the nation. They got talent all over that offense too. I think they're up there with Ohio State. If you're going to say Ohio State isn't the best player for player, Georgia's probably the one you're arguing with them in terms of roster. So Georgia next up. Next up, I got who I think is the clear favorite to win the Big 12, and that is Utah. I think Utah is going to win the Big 12. They're just every year in the Pac 12, they're just always damn good, man. It's like you never look at Utah and you're like, oh, they're the spicy favorite to win the Natty this year, but like they're always just from top of the roster to the bottom of the roster. They got one of the best coaches in all of college football, and they're just always so consistent. Cam Rising's coming back for his 20th season as their starting quarterback, and that team's just going to be a super good team. And what I think is going to be a really competitive Big 12 team, trust me, I'm going to be talking more about the Big 12 as we get later on. It's going to be a really competitive Big 12. I think Utah is just the best bet. They've always been good in the Pac 12. Now coming over, I think they're going to win the Big 12 this year. Next up is the ACC. Let's go and look at. I got 3 ACC teams I think making the college football playoffs, and you're like, ACC 3 teams, and it's like, yeah, because I think the ACC is kind of top heavy, and I think these teams will kind of just clear out the ACC, and I think they're all really talented teams with some questions at quarterback for a couple of the teams, but just the talents off the board. Starting off with Florida State, I think they have the best chance of winning the ACC, and I know they bring in DJ Uiagalelei. It's going to be a step down from Jordan Travis, but what I think about Florida State is just that defense at Florida State might be one of the best, if not the best defense in the nation. I mean, they got talent all across that defense. I think that defense is going to be incredible this year. And I think especially in the ACC where you don't have these super high-powered offenses every week like you might see in like the SEC and the Big Ten, I think that defense can win them a lot of games, and DJ Uiagalelei just has to provide them with that floor and just be a game manager for them and not lose the game, and I think they're going to be an incredible team. Next up, I got one of my favorites who I actually think has a really good chance of winning the ACC, and it's Miami, man. I am all in on the Miami Hurricanes this year. I think this team, Cam Ward was one of my favorite quarterbacks last year. I thought if he entered the draft, he was like a potential top 50 guy in the draft for me. I love Cam Ward coming from Washington State. The fact that they got him, they got the name's blanking me, the Oregon State running back, incredible dude. They got Xavier Restrepo, one of the best receivers in the nation this year. They got talent all across that defense. I think Miami's one of my favorite underdog teams this year. I think they could easily win the ACC, and I think Cam Ward is going to be a Heisman finalist. That's my hot take for the year. All in on the Miami Hurricanes. We'd love to see Miami Hurricanes do well, and I think they're one of the teams that you got to mention. I think they're going to make the college football playoffs. And then the last ACC team I got to mention for now is Clemson. As much as we can, Clemson gets made fun of for all their transfer portal stuff. They've had a couple down years last year, and like we talk about their down years pretty much since Trevor Lawrence left. Their down years, they still lose like 2 to 4 games. They're not like super down years. They're down years for Clemson, but they're still pretty good years. They're still competing for the ACC every year. Cade Klubnik should just be better. I mean, he has all the talent in the world. It's whether or not he puts it together. He's just going to get 1 year better. That defense still has insane talent all across the board. They were a younger kind of team. I don't want to say a young team last year. They were a younger team, but they still got like their leader and Barrett Carter coming back this year. They got dudes that I'm just really excited about on that defense. I love Sammy Brown. I think he's going to make an impact as a freshman at Clemson, but they got dudes, and as much as people like to say they've been bad lately in that, they still one of the most talented rosters in all of college football. So I have to put Clemson in there as another team. Next up, going back to the SEC, we got Alabama. Jalen Milroe coming back. They still got a lot of the talent that they had last year. They didn't really lose a lot. Isaiah Bond sucked to lose for them, but I don't think he's going to like drop them. They were one of the top 4 teams last year. I think they're going to be another top team in the SEC this year. Even though they lost Saban, they still had a really good recruiting class even after Saban left. I think they're not going to miss a beat with a new coaching staff and everything. A lot of change coming in for Bama, but the talent's all still there. I know that, like I said, they lost some guys, but I think they're going to replace them and still be one of the top teams. It's like Bama can take a decent step back from last year and still be a playoff team. I mean, they were in the 4-team college football playoffs last year, so they can take a step back, and maybe they're like an 8 to 10 seed this year, but that's still take a step back, but they're still one of the top teams in the nation, no matter how you put it. Next up, I'm going to say Notre Dame is my next one. I'm not a huge fan of Notre Dame this year. I love Riley Leonard, but I'm just curious to see how he is coming off of his injury, how healthy he is. If Riley Leonard plays like he was at the beginning of last year at Duke, I think Notre Dame is going to be a great team. But mainly the main reason is Notre Dame has a pretty easy schedule this year. So they're going to kind of cruise with one, probably lost the entire year, maybe 2, and I think they're going to be an easy kind of shoe-in team in the playoffs. Then I got Penn State. I've debated Penn State a lot because the talent is undeniable with Penn State. Not a Drew Aller fan myself, but I love their running backs. Nick Singleton is one of my favorite players. That defense has talent all over the board. Abdul Carter is going to be like maybe a top 10 pick in this next year's NFL draft. They got the talent. It's really just up to Drew Aller. If Drew Aller can kind of put it together this year, they have a chance to win the Big Ten. I don't think they will, because that's asking a lot from Drew Aller, but nonetheless, they're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, and I think that's going to be enough to slide them into the playoffs. My last team, I got 2 more. My last Power 4, we got to call it P4 now because the RIP Pac-12. But then my last Big 4 team is Ole Miss. Now, I'm going to mention another team with Ole Miss. For me, I think another SEC team is going to make it, and it was between Ole Miss and Missouri. One of those 2 teams is going to be the team in the playoffs. And I went back and forth a lot, but I decided to go with Ole Miss. They got so much. I mean, Walter Nolan, I think, is going to be one of the best players in college football this year. He kind of had a little downtime at A&M after being a former number 1 recruit. But I think he's going to be huge this year. Princely Oman-Mielen at the edge. We got Jackson Dart. I mean, this team's talent. Trey Harris is going to be one of the top receivers in the next draft class. They got talent all across the board. I love Lane Kiffin. Like, they got everything to put it together. But they've also had talent the last couple of years. So it's like they just never have won the big games. And that's what part of scares me a little bit. And then talking about Missouri real quick, not a huge Brady Cook fan, but he's good. And it's Luther Burden is incredible. But I forget his name, but they lost one of their starting D linemen already. With all the talent, they got to start 2 new corners this year after both enter the draft. So I think Missouri's just a step down. But it's between them and Ole Miss. I end up going with Ole Miss as my last SEC team. And then the last team, we got to have another conference winner. And for me, I'm looking at the group of 5, and one of these teams is going to run the slate and make it. And the 3 teams it's down between for me is Liberty, Memphis, and Appalachian State. Now, App State and Liberty play each other this year, I'm pretty sure. So whoever wins that game could be the one making the playoffs. If I had to bet my money out of those 3 teams, I would put it on Liberty. Although I think it's close. I've seen people pick Memphis. I've seen a couple of guys think it's App State. The main debate's between Liberty and Memphis. But I think Liberty could run the slate, go undefeated, and they're going to be that 5th conference winner that goes ahead and makes the playoffs. So I got Liberty in that last spot. Now, after those guys, I got 6 teams that are kind of on the bubble for me that I could see easily making it, but I don't necessarily have them in. First one I already mentioned was Missouri. The next one, I'll go with the other one was SEC. We got Texas. I think Texas lost a lot, man. Especially CJ Baxter being out for the year now already is tough for them. I like Quinn Ewers, but I mean losing AD Mitchell, they lost Xavier Worthy, they lost their starting safety. Um, they still have tons of talent. I think they're gonna be good. It's their first year in the SEC. I think they might struggle a little sometimes. I still love Texas. I think they're gonna be a great team, but I just have them just outside on the bubble. And then my next four are just I got four Big 12 teams, man. I think a second Big 12 team could easily make it. But I don't know who it's gonna be, man. The Big 12 is deep, so we'll go through them one by one. We got Arizona is the first one. By the way, these aren't in order. These are just the four teams I'm mentioning because I can see any one of them kind of taking a leap. The first two, I pretty much have the same argument for. It's Arizona and Colorado. Yes, I live in Colorado. I'm a Colorado fan. I'm biased. I don't care. You're coming to my channel. I'm a biased Colorado fan. A lot of people don't like them, but that talent. If you go check out my video about Colorado if you want to see more, because I think that roster is more complete than a lot of people make it out to be. But the argument for Arizona and Colorado is the same: is that they got dudes, man. Arizona's got Noah Fafita and they got Toria McMillan. I'm definitely I butcher his name every time I say it. They got him. They got the corner's name who's just blanking my mind right now. But they got top tier talent. They got great offensive line. And the same with Colorado. You got Travis, you got Shador, you got BJ Green. You got like elite dudes on these two teams, but you have a lot of questions other places of the roster. Arizona got a new coaching staff coming in. So there's questions with both of these two teams, but they have elite players that could easily carry them to the college football playoffs. So I have to mention both of those two teams. Then the last two teams are kind of on the other end of the argument where I think they just have really solid all-around rosters, and that's Kansas State and Oklahoma State. The one thing with Kansas State is they probably have the best all-around roster out of all these four teams in the Big 12. They got the young dude at quarterback. We'll see how it works out there. Oklahoma State obviously got Ollie Gordon leading the charge as a baller, but these two teams both have really complete rosters, and they've always been competitive, man. Like the Big 12 has always just been competitive, and Kansas State and Oklahoma State have always been like over 500 teams. You're gonna find a year where they weren't, but they've always been solid teams the last couple of years. I mean, Kansas State even beat TCU a couple of years ago in the Big 12 championship before TCU ended up making their run to the national championship. So like they're just both really solid teams that have always been good and they're always going to be good. So I think out of Arizona, my bias pick in Colorado, Kansas State and Oklahoma State, one of those four teams is going to be in the Big 12 championship with a chance to, even if they lose the Big 12 championship, still a chance to make the playoffs just because they're in one of those P5 conferences. Anyways, that is my predictions. We got Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Utah, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Bama, Penn State, Notre Dame, Liberty, and Ole Miss. That's my 12 projections with the other 8 teams I mentioned looking from the outside. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know your 12 team predictions, teams I didn't talk about, teams you think I'm too low on, teams you think I'm too high on. It's going to be a crazy college football season with this new conference realignment. It's just so hard to tell. So many transfers make teams so new, like especially teams like Colorado and Ohio State and Oregon. We have so many new pieces with these older transfers coming in, because before you could kind of project like it's the same team with this young guy coming up, but now we got like dude like Caleb Downs just jumping into Ohio State as the best safety in the nation. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Like the video, subscribe for more content if you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one.